Hi everyone, welcome to CARNATIONS Waypoint, the podcast where we explore how research is shaping the future of transportation.
Hi, my name is Sherman Lo. I'm a senior research engineer at the Stanford University GPS lab. I'm also executive director of the Stanford Center for Position, Navigation, and Time. I've been working in the field of GNSS and navigation for over 30 years, with particular focus on developing navigation GNSS to robustness and resiliency for transportation. We want to make sure it's safe enough for use for critical applications such as guiding and landing airplanes.
Can you explain your research in plain English?
Yes. So what we do here at the Stanford GPS lab primarily is to work on making navigation and GNSS uh, reliable and trustworthy enough for use in many transportation applications, particularly those that involve life or livelihood. So we want to make sure we protect people's lives. We want to make sure we protect people's livelihood. And what do I mean by that? Trust. What that means is that you can get a position, let's say on your phone. And sometimes your phone will give you a little circle of where they think you might be within. But how do you know that you're within that circle? In fact, here on my phone, I'm actually a little bit outside that circle. So we want to be able to provide that circle with a guarantee that we're always going to be within that safety bound. And so we know how much we can trust the navigation system. So we want to have this provable, demonstratable, reliable. And that way, when you know you can have that level of trust, you can use it for applications such as landing airplanes or navigating boats into narrow harbors.
Mhm.
That's the type of things that we work on.
That's amazing. So, how does it affect everyday life?
Yeah, so that's great. So let's go back to the example of landing airplanes. Um, we work on practically every system that's been used in commercial aviation that uses GPS and GNSS. And so we've developed safety systems to make sure that we can provide a level of trust for that. And so when you got on an airplane, the pilot probably used a system that we worked on to both take off the airplane, to navigate the airplane, and also to land the airplane. And so every time you get on an airplane, you're touching systems that we had a hand in.
It's pretty cool to know about these things. So, how does your research help transportation make safer and more reliable for everyone?
That's a good question. So this goes back to what I was talking about in terms of trusting GNSS. So why do we have to have a trust? Because there are errors that can happen in our position solution from GPS, GNSS that can cause us to deviate from where we think we are. And some of those are natural errors and things that happen within the system, and we do analysis to handle that. The bigger problem nowadays are deliberate attacks on GNSS, jamming, which prevents the use of GNSS signal, or even worse, spoofing, which are fake GNSS signals that gives you false positions. And so we work on multiple aspects that protect against that. So first part is this concept called protect, toughen, and augment.
Mhm.
First part is protect. So we work on systems that protect GNSS by letting us know when there are these issues. So we work on this low-cost monitor, which could be fielded quickly and rapidly and cost-effectively in different places to detect when there's an error in GPS, when it's being denied or it's being spoofed. We also work on systems such as using aircraft that are already monitoring GNSS to find out where the hotspots around the world are for interference.
What else is being done to protect?
So there's other things that we can do. We can toughen our GPS, GNSS receivers with lots of different technologies. So a couple of things that we're working on are different antenna technologies, using array antennas, multiple antennas, working together, or antennas that look at different polarization to be able to kind of handle jamming and spoofing better than traditional GPS receivers. So we're working on things that will allow the receiver to handle jamming and spoofing in a way that receivers don't do now. And the final thing that we're also working on is looking at alternates or complementary signal, other technologies that are complementary to GNSS that we can use if GNSS is unavailable or spoofed, and we can cross-check, or that can work together with GNSS to make it tougher for an attacker to affect GNSS.
Oh, that's amazing. So for our listeners, I would like to ask a question, like a cross question. Let's say if we are using GPS on our phones specifically, right? So how does it work? And then what happens if the signals get spoofed or jammed?
That's great. So first it starts with me explaining GPS in a quick way, and so it'll take a little time. But basically, the way we figure out position with GPS is that we get distances from known locations. So imagine if there's a, a transmitter that's some ways away. Let's say that chair is transmitting something, and I make a distance measurement of that. I'm 5 feet away from that chair. That would define possible places I'm at. A circle that's a radius 5 feet from that chair. Now, if we have multiple chairs and we have multiple measurements of that, we can imagine multiple circles that intersect, and that's where we get our position. So we're getting from GPS, what we're getting is a distance measurement, and from getting that from multiple satellites, we can get our location. So what happens with jamming and spoofing? Well, with jamming, it's denying that. It's not allowing us to make that measurement. It's not allowing us to find that signal to make that measurement of that distance. And with spoofing, it's putting out a fake version of that signal that maybe it'll tell you that you're 7 feet away instead of 5 feet away. And so when you draw that circle, you'll be at the wrong location. And so that's what's happening with the phone when we are being attacked.
So it's like throwing a ball at one position and then not getting the distance how far I threw the ball.
Right. You're getting a different distance, which will make you think you're at a different location.
Last year in Carnations Days at Virginia Tech, I attended your presentation about jammer test. So can you please tell our listeners what jammer test is and what's done there, and can you share like some memorable moments out of the festival out there?
Oh, absolutely. Jammer Test is a great event. It's an event where it's a 5-day event where we can test GPS, GNSS equipment, and other equipment against actual live on-air jamming and spoofing of GNSS signals. Why is that important? Well, because GNSS is so critical to our economy, that kind of interference is actually illegal to do. Only a few groups in the U.S. are allowed to do it, and they have to have special permission to do it. And it's only done in the middle of the night where it has the least amount of effect. So because of this, it's pretty much impossible to test on-air live attacks on GNSS. And so Jammer Test offers this opportunity. It's held in the far north of Norway, about 70 degrees north latitude, in a place where I heard this kind of testing won't affect too many people.
Wow.
And we get to try out collect data on real live attacks, as well as test our algorithms on real live attacks, and a variety of different attacks. Because imagine man-made attacks, it's up to people's imagination. So it could be a lot of different ways of doing these attacks. And so the good thing about jammer tests is that they're very flexible. We can do lots of different types of testing at that event, and we're really glad to have it. And in terms of there are lots of interesting stories. I'll just give a few from last year's test. And like I said, it won't affect very many people, but it still affects some people. There's a town of 500 people that we operate in. They're all warned about this issue, so they know not to worry about it. But on one of the nights, an old couple from out of town was coming to stay and visit, and they were driving around, and we saw them, and they seemed lost, and so. It's a very small town, and we saw them back to the same place half an hour later, still not finding where they wanted to be. And I realized, oh yes, we're still doing spoofing tests. So their GPS is probably telling them they're in the wrong location.
Wow.
And so I actually went up and talked to them and said, look, don't trust your GPS right now. The place you're looking for, because town's very small. I could see.
And we are playing with it.
Yeah, it's very small. It's just right down the street, but you're always going to get this location on your GPS. That's because it's being spoofed. So I think they were fortunate, and they found their way there finally, but they really took a lot of time. In a town that basically they could have just, it would take them 10 minutes to walk across. They were searching half an hour and more for their hotel.
So at Jammer Test, they call you Sherman the physical map?
No, yeah. So it's important to learn how to use physical maps. The second thing that happens just shows the importance of GNSS is we had a test on one of the days, and they had to call it off because there was an oceanic search and rescue that had occur, and they need GPS GNSS for that to support that. And there were lots of tests that were going to be done. There was even a Airbus A340 was flying that day to do that. So it was a big deal to canceled that day, but it just shows the importance of GNSS, and when you don't have it, it can hamper
Yeah,
safety of life.
that's great. You're doing a great work. So this is very good to know, and your experiences about the GNSS and GPS, how it works, and your experience at the jammer test. I really like the story part
Yeah.
because you are kind of blocking so many signals, and then suddenly an actual signals comes in who really wants to go to their position, and you help them. It's great to know. Students today are very curious to learn more about this field. It would be very helpful if you could answer a few questions that students commonly have before entering this field. So, one of the questions that I got is um, they are interested in GPS or navigation but have never worked in this area. What practical first step would you recommend they take to get involved?
So I have two things that they can do to kind of get themselves up to speed a little bit on it. One thing is there are plenty of online kind of short courses on GNSS. The one I would recommend, if you look up in YouTube, look up some courses from Frank Van Diglen and Per Enge. They have a shared lecture that's at a good level to listen to. The other thing I would do is if you can get an Android phone and you can install an app called GPS Test, or there are other similar apps, but actually there are two apps called GPS Test. Um, Either one will work, and just play around with that. There are a couple of things that you'll see in it. It will tell you accuracy of your GPS position, and it'll also give you individual measurements of every satellite. There are what's known as signal to noise ratio, SNR, or sometimes it's called in those apps carrier to noise ratio. And you can go outside in different places, like an open field, and see how many satellites you see in view, how good your accuracy of position is, and what the CA and not the SNR of those satellites are. And do that for different locations, like when you're in an urban environment, when you're around lots of buildings, or when you're next to a building, or when you're slightly indoors. You'll get to have a feel of where GPS performs well, where it performs poorly,
Mhm.
um, and all the variations thereof on that. And I think so. That's you can get some practical hands-on experience, and once you have that and knowledge of how it works, then I think you can start doing some work with. You could find a lab that's working on GNS and contact them and see what you can help out with.
That's great. So you mentioned about looking for the satellites. So
Yeah.
how can a person look for that?
So in the app itself, it'll tell you which satellites the receiver is tracking. And also, if you look, it has something called a sky map. If you
Mhm.
kind of know your orientation, you can kind of know where the satellite is. You won't be able to see it visually because
Yeah.
it's too small and too far, but you will know where that satellite should be in the sky relative to your location. But the receiver looks for the satellite signal. It does some
So
electrical engineering magic, tracking magic to it, and we'll talk about
yeah.
later.
So in our orbit, there are a lot of satellites, which some are related to navigation, some are weather satellites, some are related to temperatures. So how to recognize specific satellite for navigation and GPS?
It's in the signal design. Signal design, it's looking for a specific signal and specific
Mhm.
information in the signal. So we won't our receiver GPS receiver won't lock onto a different satellite. It will find the specific navigation satellites it's looking for. Also, because navigation is so critical and important, these navigation signals often, but not always, are in protected part of the spectrum. So no other non-navigation signals
Okay.
can be transmitted there from satellites. And so because of that, we shouldn't mistaken a non-navigation satellite for a satellite.
That's good to know. That's really amazing. So the second question which I got is what skills are most useful for students interested in GPS, navigation, or transportation innovation?
So I would say that's actually there's no I think engineering, math skills, and science skills are important in general, and I think that's important for GNSS research. But GNSS, like a lot of things, it's really a system of systems. There are a lot of different fields and backgrounds you can have. I know people with a background in physics are in GNSS, and people with background in atmospheric science that work in GNSS, and I know people with background in electrical engineering
Mhm.
that work on GNSS, and my background is aerospace engineering, and so it really depends. Like receiver is a lot of electrical systems, antenna systems. So if you work on that aspect, it's you might want that background. But if you like atmospheric science, well, GNS is used to understand the atmosphere and understand even do measurements of like moisture content. And so you can have a science background, understanding of the receiver, and use some understanding of the receiver to help that. So I think it has room for lots of different people as long as you have a good foundation of math, science, and engineering. I think you can find your niche there and learn what you need to learn from there to be successful in the field.
So, lastly, I would like to ask, what advice would you give to students or early career professionals wanting to make a real impact in GNSS
Yeah.
field?
Yeah. I was thinking about this, and I think impact is there's some things that you can do, and there's some things that are out of control. Some things are depend on luck and you know and policy and just the trend of the market. But what you can do, what I tell students to focus in on are understanding the fundamentals of navigation. So even though the technology we use right now, the GPS or in general GNSS, understand the fundamentals of navigation that it works on. These principles can apply to different newer navigation systems, and understand and develop skills of techniques. So common filtering, um, signal processing, different skills that can apply to dip different technologies because the technology might change. Navigation's changed from before GNSS to now, but the fundamental concepts are very similar, um, and the processing that we do can be very similar.
Mhm.
And so I say focus in on fundamentals of how navigation works and kind of skills and techniques that we can use to enhance the navigation solution, and learn technology as you need to because it will evolve. GNSS, we're seeing perhaps the next generation GNSS with low Earth orbiting satellite-based navigation. So, but that still uses fundamental techniques that we've known about that we used to develop the first satellite navigation system. So, um, yeah, that's my advice.
That's a great advice, students, listeners. Keep that in mind. This will be really helpful. You gave me this device, so can you please tell the listeners what this device is?
So this device it came off an airplane. It's a DME distance measuring equipment, DME antenna. It's a DME is a older navigation system. Uses a very similar idea, distances from a, a known transmission source
Mhm.
as GPS. And so, like I said, fundamentals are the same, but it uses different frequencies and different technologies.
So
And
it
so
transmits or receives,
it
or
for this
both.
it does both. So it does so there is a subtle difference. GPS only transmits, and you don't need a satellite only transmits. You don't need to transmit back. But
Mhm.
here on the airplane, you transmit out. The ground system transmits back, and you get something known as a round trip distance or a true range.
So let's do rapid fire round now. GPS, lifesaver or sometimes frustrating?
Lifesaver,
Navigation technology, overhyped or underestimated?
underestimated.
Biggest misconception about GPS?
Well, it's not going to be one word, but it spies on you. It doesn't. It's purely passive. So you only receive a signal.
If you weren't in the transportation research, what would you be doing?
I'm not sure. I've been in it so long.
All right. Favorite gadget you can't live without?
Unfortunately, it's probably the smartphone.
Worst GPS fail you have witnessed in the field?
It actually has to relate with a smartphone. During one of the conferences, somebody accidentally left equipment on that spoofed a lot of smartphones in the conference, and because of how reliant smartphones are on GPS for time, it bricked quite a few of them.
Dr. Lowell, thank you for sharing your work and giving us a clear picture of how GPS resilience impacts everyday transportation.